Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of UC Sports. I'm Alexandria Palmer alongside Hezekiah Johnson. We have a show packed full of UConn sports.
You've got Alexandria. Tonight we'll have the latest on UConn football's road to bowl eligibility. Plus, catch up on the latest accomplishments from the field hockey team.
The UConn men's hockey team hosted Vermont this past weekend in a 2-game series. The Huskies were hoping for a win as they came into the game on a 5-game winless streak. They were extremely successful in the first game, beating Vermont 5-1. UConn spread the scoring around with 4 different players scoring goals. The second game was more difficult for UConn. Vermont was able to win the game 4-2. The Huskies will play their next series at the XL Center against Ohio State. On the women's side, the UConn women's hockey team hosted RPI this past Friday. The Huskies ended up on top as they beat RPI 4-1. UConn played RPI on Saturday for round 2. RPI stepped up their game and it ended in a scoreless tie. Goalie Morgan Fisher made 30 saves, matching her career high.
UConn football lost their second straight game this weekend to USF 37-20. The game was finally played after being rescheduled from week 2 of the season due to Hurricane Irma. The Huskies are now 3-6 on the year, and our very own James Santamaria was there for the coverage.
Each team's first drive was scoreless. USF would strike first with a 1-yard touchdown run on their next drive. The Huskies' offense would struggle in the first quarter, but their defense would hold up, not allowing any more points and even getting an interception from Trey Bell. The USF offense went on full attack mode to start the second quarter, marching all the way down the field to score their second touchdown of the game. UConn would answer on their next possession with a 2-yard touchdown pass from Bryant Sheriffs to Tommy Myers. USF would take the ball, go all the way down to the UConn 21-yard line until they were held to a field goal by the Huskies. UConn would get the ball back and march all the way down to the red zone. However, an interception that was tipped off of Aaron McLean's hands would end the half for the Huskies. USF would go on a scoring spree in the third quarter. It started with a field goal to begin the quarter, followed up by 2 touchdowns on their next 2 drives. The Huskies were shut out in the third quarter with no points being scored at all. The fourth quarter would bring highs and lows for the Huskies. They'd start the fourth quarter with a Kevin Mensah touchdown. USF would kick an astonishing 51-yard field goal. Bryant Sheriffs would go down with a concussion, ending his final game in Regler Field. David Pindell would take over for the Huskies and would get a touchdown run of his own from 10 yards out. However, that would be the last score of the game, and the final score was 37-20 USF.
Yes, basketball season is here, ladies and gentlemen. The UConn women's team held their second exhibition game Sunday against Ashland University. The Lady Huskies looked really dominant, beating Ashland 119-56, but still have minor adjustments to make before they kick off their 2017-18 campaign against powerhouse Stanford in the Countdown to Columbus tournament in Columbus, Ohio. I'm now joined by basketball analyst Chinadu Amanu, who has more on the women's team. Welcome to the show, Chen.
It's good, y'all.
How do you think this team compares to last year's?
I think this team is way better. You know, they're way more experienced. They're bringing back 3 All-Americans and Katie Lou Samuelson, Nafisa Collar, and Gabby Williams. I had the chance to talk with Gabby last week before their exhibition match, and from our conversation, this team is very hungry, man. Last year, this team was very young and inexperienced, and it showed last year during tournament time. The big difference with this team this year is their depth. Yesterday in their exhibition match, they had 6 players in double figures, with Azare Stevens and Megan Walker igniting the spark off the bench. Not only that, but they're sharing the ball on offense. Yesterday, they had 36 assists, and they shot 63% from the field. They're out here looking like the Warriors, man. Once again, the GOAT, Gino Auriemma, has found a way to make this UConn women's basketball team better than last year.
With that being said, who do you think will be the most impactful addition to the team this year, whether it's a transfer or a freshman?
Azare Stevens, in my eyes, will be the most impactful addition to the team this year. We're talking about a 6'6" forward coming off the bench who takes care of business on both sides of the ball. Last night, she was the go-to option for the second unit, and she certainly delivered with 16 points, 11 rebounds, and 4 blocks, while shooting 75% from the field. Her production off the bench is going to be key to UConn's postseason run this year. I believe that she will be big for the Huskies as the season progresses.
And finally, what's your prediction for the season? Give me a record. Do you believe this team will go all the way?
In the words of my man Bryce Satilla, the Huskies are back and they're better. The Huskies will be playing with a chip on their shoulder following last year's loss to Mississippi State in the tournament, but I feel like they'll rebound this year. Their schedule opens up with 4 consecutive games against ranked opponents, which will be a true test, but I don't see them losing any of those games. Not only that, but later on down the season, they have a couple of big games where they face currently ranked number 2 Texas, and also when they go down in February visiting University of South Carolina, which are the defending champs. Those are going to be some tough games, but in the end, I see this team going undefeated, and yes, they will go all the way. This team is in for another historic year.
Thank you, Chinadu. That's it for women's basketball, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some analysis on the men's team.
Welcome back to UC Sports. On the men's side of things, the men's basketball team defeated Queens College this Sunday 100-43. Kevin Ali's squad looked really comfortable in their final exhibition game. The Huskies started off the game on a 28-0 run and ended the game with 4 players scoring in double digits. Their first test of the season will be the home opener against Colgate this Friday, November 10th. We turn to Ryan Kim, who has the coverage.
UConn men's basketball had its third and final tune-up of the 2017-18 season against Queens College. UConn looked to be in mid-season form with everything working in their favor. The Huskies broke out to a 28-0 run as Queens could not hit from anywhere. The Knights were 0 for their first 13 field goal attempts while amassing 20 turnovers. UConn took advantage, collecting 28 points off those turnovers, dishing 25 assists, and putting together a near-flawless half of basketball.
I do like our assist numbers. I think we have some great facilitators out there, kind of more than we had last year.
The Huskies could have hoped halftime didn't happen as their few weaknesses on the night were exploited by Queens. UConn showed their perimeter defense to be vulnerable after the Knights hit 7 of their team 9 in the second half. UConn continued to display an explosive post presence after the Huskies put up 60 points in the paint to follow up the 70 against Merrimack last week. Christian Vital says the many options they have on offense with a strong defensive stand will be an opponent killer.
We have a lot of options on offense, but mainly our defense. If we lock in on defense the way we can and we're supposed to, I don't think there's going to be many teams that's going to be able to stop us.
The Huskies will look to avenge a sub-500 2016 season right back here on Friday night as they open their season against Colgate. From Gamble Pavilion, I'm Ryan Kim, UC Sports.
I'm now joined by our basketball analyst, Ryan Kim, so we can dive into things a bit more. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
First off, what was your biggest takeaway from this game against Queens?
Yeah, well, Alex, the biggest thing with this game against Queens last night was, even though they are an inexperienced team, they've built great chemistry so far, considering they've had 3 games with the extra exhibition game in there. And in the past 2 games, they've scored 130 points in the paint. 130. They've only had 179 points total in those 2 games. That's 73% of their points that are coming inside the paint. And sure, Merrimack and Queens are 2 Division II teams, but, you know, when the real tests start to come, the high percentage shots that they're getting on the inside, that's huge news for a team that's notoriously been struggling with the 3-point shot. And another great thing is the way that they've been moving the ball around. They've had 25 and 18 assists respectively in the past 2 games, and that shows that the team is unselfish and they're looking for the easier shot over the superstar shot. So, as you had mentioned, they had 4 players in double figures, but the big concern here is because of their struggles on the outside and they're relying so far in the post, you know, when bigger, more physical teams like Arizona, Cincinnati, or maybe even a Temple come and lock down the middle, where's the team going to go? That's the part that you really have to focus in on, that Kevin Ali really has to get his team to think moving forward.
This team is very young. Who do you think will be the breakout player for the men?
Yeah, well, The easy answer is Jalen Adams, just because he's proven to be the player that everyone wants him to be. And I want to say Terry Lara just because of how great he looked before the season-ending injury last year. But I'm not going with either of those two. I'm going to go with sophomore Christian Vital. I think this team, as I said earlier, they need the outside shooters if they want to compete with the high-powered offenses, just because the teams are going to beat them down low, as I had mentioned earlier. The tallest player on this team is 6'9". You have guys in the conference with, say, Taco Fall at UCF, who's 7'7", maybe even taller. I don't know, but Christian Vital, he's going to be that X factor, I think, who's shown consistently to score the three ball. He went 4 for 8 from downtown against Queens, but his catch is he went 4 for 13 combined against Merrimack and Providence. He can't have that going forward. If he can shore up the shooting percentage and take the next step as a leader to join Jalen Adams in the front court, then there's a good chance that he becomes the go-to guy whenever Jalen Adams is either on the bench in foul trouble or just teams are locking in on him defensively. So he finished his freshman year as the team's best three-point shooter, shooting it at a 37% clip. So the potential is there. But I think in order for him to capitalize, he needs to get that percentage up to maybe 40, maybe 45. But he definitely has the breakout potential.
And finally, what's your overall prediction for the season? Are the Huskies a tournament team?
Oh man, well I'll say it's definitely too far ahead to say that they'll be coming down the Nets in San Antonio in April. But trust me, there's a lot of basketball to be played, and if all the pieces click right and they reach their full potential, all the players, then this team they are good enough, and I have seen them good enough the past two games against the Division II schools. They are good enough to potentially crack the top 25 down the stretch. Now, it'll be a tough task given the brutal December schedule specifically, because they've been dealt Syracuse, Arizona, Auburn, and then you start the conference schedule at the end of December against Wichita State, newcomer, but over the past couple years, they've been very good. They've been not a conference team. They've been a tournament team, so that's a game to look out for. And this team, they should win the gimme games, the first two games, especially against Colgate on Friday. But unfortunately, we know how that went last year, and we can't always be guaranteed there. But a test will come early in the PK80 tournament where they see Final Four team Oregon in the first game, and potentially, if things go as planned, they'll see Michigan State, a team led by Tom Izzo, who knows what he has up his sleeve, because every year it always seems he's coming in with one of the best freshmen or underrated team that's always overachieved. So that's going to be a great game. But definitely the talent is there. It's just a matter of whether they can all mesh together and consistently put together a winning resume. And it's tough to project just because, like I said, there's so much. The seasons haven't even started yet. But if all the pieces come together, if the team can be not perfect, that's not going to happen, but if they can start winning some games by a decent amount of margin, especially in tournaments, tournament play is going to be huge for this team, then I can see us being optimistic and going for that tournament, getting us back into that field over 500, and we'll be all good.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Time will tell what this season will bring for the Huskies. We've got to go to a quick commercial, but when we come back, we'll have updates on more UConn sports, including field hockey, who continued their undefeated campaign.
The UConn men's soccer team lost their 7th game of the season, losing to SMU 1-0. This match was at a standstill until SMU's McLaughlin Garrett scored the game's only goal, which came at the 78-minute mark. The loss put the Huskies at 8-7-2 on the season and 3rd in the American Conference. They will have an extended stay in Dallas for the first round of the conference tournament against UCF. Tragic loss for the UConn women's soccer team Wednesday, as they were eliminated in the first round of the American Championship by Memphis 3-1. Memphis took control early on in the match, putting pressure on UConn's defense. The Huskies' only goal of the game occurred in the 77th minute on a free kick from Vivian Bio. She led her team with the 6 free kick goals on the season. The Huskies head into the offseason with a strong returning cast. We look forward to what they'll bring next season.
The UConn men's and women's swimming and diving teams both won their meets against Southern Connecticut State University this past Friday. The Huskies had first place finishes in 22 out of the 32 events. The men won 153 to 123 and the women 158 to 126. For the men, Brazil Rule captured many victories in the 50 and 100 yard. UConn will return home for a matchup against Army on Friday, November 10th. For the field hockey pitch, the UConn women's team has been successful all season long, and it continued this past weekend. The Huskies won their 6th straight Big East Tournament championship against Liberty. Goals were scored by Jessica Dombrowski, Casey Umstead, and Amanda Collins for a 3-0 win. Amanda Collins was named the tournament's most outstanding player. The Huskies were awarded the #1 overall seed in the national tournament. As such, they will play the winner of the Fairfield-Boston University on November 11th in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
The men's golf team finished 10th in the Ka'anapali Collegiate Classic in Hawaii this weekend. They shot a 10 over 862, finishing ahead of 11 teams. Redshirt sophomore Drake Hull led the Huskies, tied for 27th with an even par. Junior co-captains Jimmy Ervil and Nabil Khan tied for 36th and 45th. Freshman Rodrigo Sanchez tied for 41st. Redshirt sophomore Zach Iannone finished in a tie for 92nd place, and senior Sasha Moitel-Boyer tied for 31st. The Huskies will resume play February 5th and 6th when they travel to Goodyear, Arizona to play in the Loyola Intercollegiate Tournament. The UConn women's volleyball team snaps their 5-game losing streak with a victory over Memphis with Sunday 3-1. Junior Iman McGarry and freshman Allie Barrett each recorded a double-double. Barrett placed a season-high 17 kills. She also added 10 digs and an ace. McGarry had 12 kills and 10 digs to give her her second double on the year. Junior Kennedy Arundel collected 18 digs, and Emma Turner had 56 assists and 9 digs. The Huskies will look for another victory Thursday, November 9th against Tulsa. The UConn men's tennis team finished their fall season on Sunday, competing at the Connecticut State Championship. Senior Jonathan Edwards won the individual title in the 4A flight. He rang up 3 straight victories, beating players from Quinnipiac, Marist, and Fairfield University. In doubles, Jack McLister and Hank Hill won their first 2 matches, beating Marist 6-2 and Yale 6-3. They lost their semifinal match, but avenged the loss by beating Fairfield University 6-1. John Michael Hallman made his way to the finals in a 3A flight, but came up short in the title match. Freshman Yale Jing avenged his first-round loss to beat Fairfield and Quinnipiac in singles.
And now we have Huskies in the pros, with one story rising above the rest. George Springer, former UConn baseball player, won the World Series with his team, the Houston Astros. In Game 7, he helped create an early lead by scoring a 2-run home run. He had an outstanding performance throughout the series and eventually was named MVP. Springer had an impressive 5 home runs and 7 RBIs during the series. Sadly, that's all the updates we have for you tonight. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at the UCTV Channel 14 and on Twitter at UCTV Sports for all things UConn sports. For Hezekiah Johnson, I'm Alexandria Palmer. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you here next week. Good night.